morning, good afternoon, good evening, and warm greetings to all of you. I am Sushila Kumari Thapa Magar, INE Fund Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator at International Indigenous Women Forum, FIMI. I belong to Magar Indigenous community from Nepal. Welcome to all of my sisters, brothers, and representatives from different organizations and allies on the third day of Second World Conference of Indigenous Women. We Indigenous peoples are blessed by our ancestor and Mother Earth. We enjoy the diversity, cultural diversity. Today, we are having blessing from Guatemala. I am very happy to introduce Alma Lopez for the spiritual ceremony. Alma Lopez Mijan is Maya Quechua leader from Guatemala, an activist of human rights, women's rights, youth rights, and indigenous people's rights. And also territories and natural assets from the perspective of women and indigenous people. In her journey as a Mayan woman, a single mother, daughter, sister, leader, and activist for more than 20 years, she has been weaving and promoting process of change and transformation. From a collective work, Alma has a long journey of practicing ancestor knowledge for healing. Alma, we invite you to take the floor. Over to you. Thank you.
Hola, buenas noches a cada una y cada uno. De las energías del sol, del viento, del agua, del aire y las energías de la tierra las abracen y las llenen de toda su luz, de toda su energía. Las energías de la Madre Tierra avancen con ustedes. Y hoy, en un día histórico e importante para las mujeres indígenas en el mundo, desde la energía de la luz, desde la energía de la prosperidad, desde la energía de la abundancia, desde la energía de la fuerza, desde la energía de la sabiduría, de la energía de la alegría, desde la energía del equilibrio, estamos hoy todas en este aquí y en este ahora. Hoy estamos todas entrelazando nuestras voces, entrelazando nuestros saberes, con el corazón abierto, con el espíritu fuerte y con la energía del sol y del agua, con la abuela luna, para avanzar con pasos firmes y seguros. Hoy queremos saludar a las energías femeninas que invisten el ser y hacer de todas y cada una de nosotras, con esa dualidad de ser que tenemos, investidas de energía, de sabiduría, que nuestros ancestros y ancestras nos han regalado. Hoy quisiera regalar a todas, desde este plano tierra de Xelajuno, en Guatemala, esta vela, esta luz. Esta vela que se enciende con la fuerza de la energía que tenemos las mujeres de todo el mundo. Y con este círculo voy a llenar el espacio de cada una y de cada uno de ustedes. Voy a llenar con la fuerza de las flores de color amarillo, con las fuerzas de esta luz, el ser y el espíritu de cada una. Y lo voy a poner en nuestro centro. Lo voy a poner en el centro como cuando una semilla quiere entrar en la madre tierra y la rompe con fuerza y con amor y determinación para sembrar maíz, para traer flores, para traer arroz, para traer trigo, para traer frijol, para traer flores, para traer frutos y para darnos vida. Luego paso nuestra vela al centro de nuestro pensamiento y nuestro ser, porque es allí donde tejimos toda la sabiduría ancestral que pasa de nuestra cabeza y se va hacia nuestro corazón y nos llena de fuerza y nos llena de luz. Hoy, con la energía de esta Ishim Leo, la Madre Tierra, saludo y honro a las energías de todas y cada una de ustedes, todas las que estamos hoy unidas y entretejidas a través de este espacio para poder unir nuestras voces, unir nuestros pensamientos, unir nuestros saberes, pero sobre todo unir y tejer nuestra palabra, unir y tejer nuestro saber, unir y tejer todo lo que hemos regado en la tierra fértil, haciendo participación, haciendo lucha por la tierra y el territorio, haciendo fuerza por cuidar a la madre agua, haciendo fuerza por cuidar los bosques, por cuidar los árboles, por cuidar a los animales, a las flores, a las plantas y por defender juntas esa tierra y ese territorio de donde hemos sido semilla y hoy somos flor. Hoy quiero honrar las energías de sus ancestras y ancestros, abuelas y abuelos, y a los vientres de sus madres que las han traído a este plano tierra. Con esta vela naranja quiero llenar el espacio en el que nos encontramos ahora las mujeres indígenas del mundo, que históricamente hemos luchado por el reconocimiento de nuestros derechos individuales en este ser que somos nosotras, nuestra casa, específicos porque somos mujeres con saberes y conocimientos y con luz y con ideas, y colectivos porque estamos abrazadas a la generación de nuestros pueblos, a esos derechos colectivos, a nuestra libre determinación. Y desde esa mirada quiero honrar poniendo las manos al frente y agradeciendo a todas que hayan amanecido este día y que tengamos nuestro corazón abierto y nuestro saber dispuesto a escuchar todo lo que cada una de nosotras va a tejer para avanzar en esta segunda conferencia mundial. Honrar a todas y cada una de quienes organizaron este evento histórico, quienes han tejido hilos que vienen del norte, que vienen del sur, que vienen del oeste, que vienen del occidente, que vienen de las 5 regiones del mundo que hoy nos encontramos entretejidas, como está entretejido este huipil que hoy traigo para ofrecer a todas luz y sabiduría. Gracias, abuelas, gracias, antecesoras que dejaron la madre tierra y hoy se convirtieron en viento, en aire, en colibrí, en mariposa, en flor. Y hoy honro a cada una con esta vela y pido que las energías nos ayuden a tener las palabras, los oídos y los pensamientos juntos para poder hilar con luz y con sabiduría todo lo que podamos reconocer. Hoy nada sin nosotras, todo desde y con nosotras. Hoy todas somos una. Hoy desde las 5 regiones somos una sola. Y hoy por eso yo voy a poner nuestra vela en honra a todo lo que hemos podido avanzar y a todo lo que hemos podido tejer como mujeres y como pueblos ancestrales, que hemos estado presentes siempre desde la energía de luz. Muchas gracias a cada una. Desde los 4 puntos de nuestras tierras y territorios, les abrazo el corazón, les abrazo el espíritu, les abrazo el alma y les abrazo todo su ser, todo su aj, para que sigamos avanzando hacia la fuerza con la voz firme y determinada como mujeres. Bienvenidas y muchas gracias.
Thank you, Alma, for energetic connection and warming our heart with your blessings from our ancestor and Mother Earth. So, and I will again thank you all of our sister, brothers, and allies who are with us today, both in the Zoom and also through the social networks. Your participation, your voices, and support is the basis, and it means a lot to all the organizers of this global gathering. We have saved and are sharing together the agenda of the global conference of this Indigenous women. On the first day, we made an analysis of our priority demands and shared the sustainable practices led by indigenous women at different levels. On the second day, we had an opportunity to analyze the framework of human rights of Indigenous women under the slogan that we have embraced nothing about us without us. And today, we will reflect on the Indigenous women's movement and those strategies and action to strengthen us and our movement. So, having said that, I am very pleased to present our panel on intergenerational dialogue, a look inside the Indigenous women's movement. So for this, we welcome our sister, Margarita Antonio. Margarita Antonio is Mosquito women from Nicaragua, Caribbean coast, and have very long working career. It's more than 3 decades in communication and cultural revitalization initiatives. Currently, she is INE Fund Program Coordinator at International Indigenous Women's Forum, FIMI. Margarita, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushila. Sisters, it's an enormous pleasure to be here with you in this third day of our second World Conference of Indigenous Women. This panel in which we're going to listen from the voices of different generations of Indigenous women from the Pacific, and we will also have a guest from Latin America, will highlight what are the experiences, the testimonies, what we have learned, what changes have we witnessed in our lifetime. And these voices will come from powerful women who have lead different processes and have different careers. So in this panel, as we look inside our own movement, our movement as Indigenous women, I really want to appreciate our 3 panelists and ask you to please keep your time with the 5 minutes in each intervention and follow up so we can all have little of your experience. 5 minutes is very little. It's not enough for a lifetime achievement. And for young leaders that are growing from grassroots organizations, there is so much to change. But yes, it is an opportunity for all of us coming together in this second World Conference to also, as we listen to the leaders, as we listen to the speakers, look at our own experience, reflect on our own learnings. What have we done? What challenges we face? And what are we looking towards the future? So this morning, as we get together, I want to welcome Ms. Isabelis Barzallo Iglesias. She is Vice President of the Association of Kuna Women, Nisbundor. She is an Indigenous Kuna young woman from Panama with 15 years of being in the movement for the rights of Indigenous women, where she has struggled to be visible and to be heard. She's a professional in tourism and teacher in secondary education, vice president currently of the Association of Guna Women, Ms. Bunder. Ms. Bunder recently celebrated 30 years of leadership, organization, movement with the Kuna women in Panama. And there is where Isabelis is now the vice president. She has knowledge in Indigenous women rights, having experience in several seminars that strengthen capacities of Indigenous women. So Isabelis, let's use your 5 minutes so you can tell us who inspires your activism and what has your path been like as a young Indigenous woman transforming realities. Isabel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, how everyone. And hello from Panama. My name is Isabelis, and I am very comfortable and very happy to see all of my sisters around the world. Ok, sí, para hablarle un poco de lo que es mi experiencia como en mi caminar en Isbundor y reconociendo que son los derechos humanos, derechos de las mujeres indígenas, para mí ha sido una experiencia muy grata, ya que yo tengo 31 años y desde que nací, porque mi mamá desde hace 30 años que tiene la organización, recientemente lo cumplimos, me ha inculcado, está la licenciada Diali Serman, están todas estas mayoras que nos han inculcado lo que es luchar por nuestros derechos, que se reconozcan nuestros derechos a nivel nacional, a nivel internacional, y asimismo pasarlo de generación en generación, ahora con la generación de mi hija, de mis sobrinas. Entonces en ese caminar hemos tomado mucha experiencia y que es muy bueno para nuestras futuras generaciones. En este caminar también he tenido la oportunidad de conocer muchas mujeres muy profesionales, que saben mucho del tema, de los temas que hemos visto en todos estos encuentros internacionales que hemos tenido, en esta conferencia mundial, la segunda conferencia mundial que hemos tenido. Y para mí es muy grato estar hablando aquí frente a ustedes, porque es mi primera vez a estar hablando delante de muchas personas alrededor del mundo sobre mi experiencia, sobre todos estos conocimientos que tengo gracias a la organización, gracias a mi CAN, gracias a todas las hermanas de México, Guatemala, que he conocido en estos más o menos 10 años que tengo de estar ya viajando, conociendo, tomando seminarios y diplomados. Y muy feliz nuevamente de estar aquí compartiendo esto con ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Isabel, thank you very much. It's so good to listen how organizations have nurtured your experience and how you learn from the leaders in the movement. So now we want to invite our next panelist, Ms. Alicia Limpiaco, an attorney. She served as the first women U.S. attorney for Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands in the period of 2010 through 2017. And she was elected Attorney General of Guam in 2007 through 2010. As a distinguished fellow with the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma, she collaborated with community partners in the Pacific to address human rights and social and economic justice issues. In 2019-2020, Alicia researched and prepared a regional report for the International Indigenous Women Forum, FIMI, on the status of Indigenous women in the Pacific within an international human rights framework and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Alicia has 30 years of legal experience in both the government and private sectors. In 2020, Alicia began her service as the Director of Policy, Planning, and Community Relations, lead litigation counsel, and acting administrator of court programs for the judiciary of Guam. So it is an honor to count with Alicia in this panel. And I would like to ask you if you can talk to us about how has the traditional knowledge of your Indigenous people influenced your career as a young Indigenous leader? What challenges have you faced on the way? Thank you, Alicia. The floor is yours.
Hafade, Sizus Maasi, and thank you to FEMI for the opportunity to participate in this historic Second World Conference. I am an Indigenous Chamorro woman from the island of Guam or Guahan, located in the Micronesian region of Oceania. Guam remains on the United Nations list of 17 non-self-governing territories of the world. Chamorros have been governed, occupied, and colonized by administering powers that include Spain, Japan, and the United States. And as we know, colonization has a tremendous impact on the survival of our native language, our traditions and cultural practices, and our identity as, in my situation, as being a Chamorro Indigenous woman. However, because of the resiliency and the strength of the Chamorro people, traditional Chamorro cultural practices have survived and continue to this day, which have impacted my life and my career path. So Chamorros are a matrilineal society with female chiefs or leaders that we call Magahaga, who have played and continue to play a very critical role in our society. And although men over the years have been more recognized and sharing the balance of power and authority, women continue to exert a great deal of influence. Today, women continue to have a crucial and essential role in decision-making, the passage of land from one generation to another, and in other clan and family affairs. Women are usually the spiritual leaders of our families. They guard the health of our families, care for our children, and take care of the legal and business affairs of our families. Chamorro women in Guam hold more positions of authority in government and business than one might expect in a comparable mainland US setting. So for example, today, the governor of Guam is the first woman governor. Over 50% of the Guam senators are women, including the speaker and vice speaker. And in 2020, 42% of the judges were women. The chief judge of the federal court is a woman, and I was the first woman US attorney for Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. As an Indigenous Chamorro woman raised in a matrilineal society, I had strong, courageous, and resilient Chamorro women role models. My grandmothers, Mananyan Biha, my mother and mother-in-law, Mananas, and my aunties, my Tihas. They raised and taught me about the Chamorro core value of interdependence, which centers on the importance of our familia system, our family, and not on the individual, which is what you might associate more with Western or American values. There is a Chamorro word that we use that embodies Chamorro society's emphasis on interdependence, and that word is Inafa Maulik. So Inafa Maulik shapes the way we as Chamorro people govern ourselves and how we behave toward one another. Inafa Maulik means being kind and being good to one another, making things good. Inafa Maulik also embraces other traditional Chamorro core values, respect for humanity, respect for our elders, our Saina, respect for all those that we come into contact with, our community. It also embraces discipline, responsibility, obligation, reciprocity, harmony, and sharing. So despite the modern Western focus that we see on independence and individuality, interdependence remains a traditional core value in the way that we as Chamorros have maintained our cultural and historical sense of who we are as a people. We also have a very strong sense of spirituality and connectedness to the environment and to the land. As with other Pacific Islander cultures, land is not viewed as just real estate, but as our ancestral homeland. And in this way, it has also been described as being the soul of Chamorro culture. So the women who have influenced my life, my grandmothers, my mothers, and aunties, and these traditional core Chamorro values and practices that I've just talked about, in interdependence and in Afamaulik, with the emphasis on the family, the familia system and community, not on the individual, and embracing harmony and sharing, being respectful, showing humility, being disciplined, and having a sense of responsibility and obligation, all have been in my life and in the lives of my fellow sisters and brothers and all here as Chamorros. It is also important for the men in our communities to be involved, included, and supportive. And here I speak of my husband, Vince, and I also speak of another young woman in my life, my daughter, Julia Faye, and both have been my steadfast foundation and reinforce in me the importance of a strong family foundation. I have aunties who were victims of domestic violence at a certain time in their lives and who took a stand for themselves and their children and said that no more, they are true survivors and they have influenced my life and career path. So growing up, experiencing my family's lifelong determination, advocacy, and efforts for the protection and return of our ancestral lands has also inspired me and instilled in me what I believe is our moral, ethical, and legal responsibility to seek justice and redress for those that have been disenfranchised and wronged. So to witness and experience their strength, their courage, and resilience to survive the most traumatic events, including violence, war, and colonization, and the traditional cultural practices and core values they taught me influenced my life and career path in law and justice. To be a public servant, to be a leader and a decision maker, that service is about caring for and protecting our families and community. All of these reflecting the traditional core values of interdependence and Inafamaulik that we see in Chamorro society and in other Pacific Islander cultures. Thank you, and Sizus Masi.
Alicia, thank you very much for sharing with us how important it is to have this strong tradition and how these women in your community, in your Indigenous people have built that strong person you are now today. And also the values of the practices. I learned the word Inafamalik. I like it. It is so powerful. Thank you for sharing with us. And we will come back to Alicia and Isabel is also. Now I want to introduce our third panelist by Bibion Likayang. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it good. From the Indigenous Women Network in the Philippines. Bai was born during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines in World War II. She rose up to become the only woman chieftain of the Manobo tribe. Today, she is at the forefront of fighting of a new kind of occupation. It started in 1994 when a logging company came into the Pantarong mountain range, the ancestral land of the Manobo. Bai now lives in an evacuation camp in Davao City. Her people were forced off their lands by the military occupation in the name of counterinsurgency operations that actually served to facilitate land grabs. From the camp, Bai has continued to lead her people in protests and demand a safe return to their ancestral lands. Also, we welcome Ms. Rose Hayahay, who will help us with the interpretation from her Indigenous language, from Bai Indigenous language to English, so we can all understand and learn from Bai's struggle. We will now have her testimony in a video.
Pangguhod ako ito sa inyo taman kamo. Siya ko ni sa bukaan lady ito na po nila. Yung kasikat pa intang sa upaan ko sa nato nila sa pantaron. Arakantara, may kongiyat ka namin yung bayad Arakantara. Hunter big bayang kain Arakantara na upaw so upaan na iwarad karo. Warad malakot ng pamulaan mo. Panamtamanan ng espiritu ni Arakantara. Kunad og tuling ka ipamakulay kasi o malumat. So, kapantaran sa bukan pig baruang ko tanan pig sa bukaan ko so mabato ko kamamalitanan kapantaran ko na kaupian ng kaupaw na ino. Minsan no ko inotambal tundo pangangayat pantaran tambal panganak kasakit ngoriya ko dia kayo pangulo ino ino tuktul kahipat bisaya tuktul may mapolos pamaruton ay kamusapot pamawi na ito mo pato yung kasakit uliam ano kay karuhan ng palit ng tambay yung parang matambay hantod nakaawo kay ruo ni mumakay doharan pangbuhod kay to sa ini na problema kantara awon mati pasal kantara katupaw katawa pero tan kaupaan kono karo kasi kantara kaglayang kumpanya kamana umpis kantara no, ibon ka na ari kay gutog sa katbarati may rumbat-rumbat kana may manang pangariban si kasay kaupi ang sinabong pakamatay nga sika si manit ako kay sukulo kapakasukul ko ino kay ito paano inuwarat kalaro inupaw na taman-taman may kondi ni kayo taran hanted kung doon. Pinigran mo ikaw. Pangurot ka niya sa iyong pari. Bigpa sa iyong waypad, mapastul. Biglanganan na ito sa inyo. Hindi maritupan. Ando yung hanted kaya ito karan naka bayo. Bila abuan na tuloy dua kung matutuwa ni suwaraan na ko untuk baang ko. At sige diya Arakantara. Pagkutano kasi mamurawan. Undang kang pamurawan. Pagkakutano sika. Pagkaduro tumoy. Saka sa inakon ito kanan na maapo ko. Quando ako kamaapo ko na maliling kapag yan ko trophy ng pagkasabot. So magnari at ay po sila tupaan na kabubungan. Tawara ka sa pangawon sa sila. Pangbuhusan. Mopia pagkahay na punto so nanduma kahit maapo ko siya makasabot sa maapo ko. O ikapantaron na oyo kunog kahuwak na iyon. Parang giling kami nakapantaran kapulangi di doon bulong kasal. Tanan non dahil ingot ng kaapitan. Tanan non dahil no ingot sa ino yung makanong nung taglahang ko kono no iling si ako no pagpakabarog do ingot. Sama tamaruma ko minsan no day no pare ko salo yo kung ngay ito no ikano ayo makanang nung taglahang ko kapantaran bulihian ikani untuk atiman udlag yung undangan sika so mina.
We are so grateful for that powerful testimony that just tell us that the struggle continues. Colonization before, land grabbing now, the struggle is the same. And it happened in different places, in different regions, and we can all have testimonies and powerful messages. And as Bai said, we are not alone. When they came against us, she said, we responded with our bows and with our arrows, resistance, and that keep the movement, that keep the struggle. So I want to thank these three powerful women for coming along. And I want to get back to each one of you, asking you to share in 3 minutes. Share us some of your thoughts on what inspire you, what inspire you, what is needed to continue on the struggle based on our ancestral knowledge. What inspire you and how to continue the struggle based on our ancestral knowledge. So we can start with Alicia, then we pass to Isabel. Please, Alicia.
We must continue to fight for and to strive for increased political participation of Indigenous women so that we can continue to empower and give visibility of Indigenous women within our communities. We need to ensure that we continue to strive for and fight for the enactment of policies and legislation that will promote and ensure that Indigenous women will be holding these decision-making positions at all levels of government. And so we are aware, and as we know, there are some countries that have implemented or passed laws on ethnic and gender quotas that are aimed to ensure that we do have Indigenous women's participation in the political processes. Data collection is another issue that I know is very critical because we need to ensure that we're documenting, monitoring, and sharing information and knowledge about where Indigenous women are, how involved are they involved in our political participation process, so that again our voices can be heard and to erase any form of discrimination and racism that may be in existence. We've talked about the need to continue to build capacity on a global level. And there's been so much progress made, including all of the work of our various Indigenous women's organization and FEME to ensure that we are maximizing our resources, all of us as human beings, our technology and other financial resources that we may have available, and to build those alliances that they need to continue, because then again, we are powerful in terms of our voices in all of these various forums and to discuss these very, very critical issues. And like this particular session, we need to ensure that we involve our younger generations, our young women who we continue to dialogue with and share knowledge, and who we learn from as well, that we build these training forums so that they can also be prepared and can develop themselves in terms of this sort of new political leadership at the community, national, regional, and international levels. So again, there's been much progress made, and at the same time that we continue to collaborate, to cooperate and come together as sisters, and with the, as we discussed here, with our brothers and allies, to ensure that Indigenous women's voices are heard and strong and supported. Sizus Masi.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Very specific political participation, data, building capacity. Thank you for coming. Isabel, what will be your final remarks for this session? The floor is yours.
Sí, para mí sería muy importante seguir empoderando a toda esta nueva generación que viene, seguir compartiendo estos conocimientos que ya uno como adulto ha adquirido en todos estos procesos, porque es importante trabajar en equipo, es importante tener conocimientos también de otras hermanas de otros países para poder avanzando en nuestras luchas, en nuestros derechos y así seguir el camino y hacer realidad que todos los países tengan esos derechos de las mujeres indígenas, que ninguna se quede atrás, que ningún lugar remoto, por ejemplo, estoy hablando de Panamá, en ningún lugar remoto de la ciudad de Panamá quede por fuera. Todos estos pueblos indígenas que tenemos, todas las mujeres indígenas, trabajemos en conjunto, trabajemos de la mano para poder tener un futuro mejor, para poder tener un futuro en donde mis hijos, mis nietas, mis hijas, mis nietas puedan ver del trabajo que hicimos valió la pena, porque es lo mejor que podemos hacer para esta nueva generación, involucrar a esta juventud de la nueva generación para poder que ellos se involucren más, ellas se involucren más para poder que ellas tengan mucho más conocimientos en todas estas plataformas nuevas que han salido ahora en este tiempo de pandemia, involucrarlas más en todos estos talleres, todas estas capacitaciones que nos facilitan todas las asociaciones donde pertenecemos, como la MCAN, el FIMI, todos estos, involucrarlas más y así poder trabajar en conjunto. Gracias.
Gracias, Isabel. Talking about intergenerational dialogue, maybe we should highlight also that Miss Bundor Association have a strong, committed effort working with the girls, with the children, and with teenagers. And this is very powerful experience on their hand. And Isabel is precisely insisting in the need of the unity among us, among Indigenous women, working with the new generation, and also learning among us, exchanging among us, maintaining and building the unity. Finally, I want to ask for the final remarks coming from Bai and her struggle and her resistance in this new occupation she's fighting against in the Philippines.
Unsa daw imong maingon pagpanalipod sa yuta?
Padayon kabaron.
Gusto daw imong tingin sa
So, og barog kay padayon kay kagbarog ug sa hindag kay barog kanan. Kana so kabataan si kanagmanduan tatag ginikanan tag padayon kay kagbarog. Si kono kay barog waro karo. So kami na makabubungan ug pangkusong kabubungan. Mo pa nagbarog kisu ayo kono makabubungan. Iring tapantaron kulangi dia dan ulun salog dia dan ulun tanan way dia ulun tapantaron. Bumikan nagpakabarog kay iring kanami tamo manuhu lumad barog kay tibuk ta salog. Paingon ta tigwa kulangi pigmanduang ku tabarog ki panihurus kamarmaritanan. Importante kamaritan nagbarog.
So good day, everybody. So by Bibiaon, keep on saying that we should continue our fight no matter what happened. Indigenous people from urban and rural area should exercise the national, international, indigenous people's right, because as what by Bibiaon said, that she came from Pantaron, the mountain range in southern part of the Philippines in Mindanao, and she said that the land is their life. So if there will be uprooted, there will be a loggings and a mining. So of course, the culture and tradition will slowly disappear or faded. So we keep on fighting no matter what happened. Just fight and fight for the better and for the future of the next generation. Her apo, granddaughter, and daughter. Thank you.
Rose, thank you very much for being such a wonderful interpreter for us, and let us hear the voice of Bai telling us this important issue of the unity and the solidarity we need among communities, rural areas, and urban areas to defend our rights. Thank you very much. With this, we want to thank each one of our panelists for coming along in this intergenerational dialogue. And now we have the testimonies of the new generation.
तथा आदिवासी अभिवादन यङ नेपाली अग्रणी थापाले यङ मगर आदिवासी जाको छाङछाबाटै यङ समृद्ध र पूर्ण क्षमता छाङछ र नयाँ पूर्ण समय दिगो विकाससँग योगदान यङ छो उसकी परले इचो लागि यौ आधारभूत अधिकार र कुरेडुकी सुनिश्चित छाङ्की परले यौ समुदाय आदिवासी कानुन यङ पुस्तकाने यौ भविष्याङ्ग पर्छ उसै पनि निर्णय प्रक्रियाङ्ग यौ अर्थपूर्ण सहभागिता कोर्च वातावरण विकास छाङ्छ An indigenous greeting. I'm Agrain Thapamagar from Nepal. As Magar indigenous girl, I foresee my growth and contribution with my full potential for just, equal and sustainable development. So I must enjoy fundamental rights including equal access to education in cultural appropriate manner, transfer of indigenous knowledge of my communities from our elders, and enabling environment to participate in decision making that impacts my future. Thank you.
As an indigenous girl, I see the future as a place where indigenous peoples, cultures, and identities can be respected. And if they choose to leave their territory, they can continue practicing their cultures.
J'imagine le futur en tant que jeune fille autochtone comme étant un futur radieux. Je voudrais que dans un futur proche, nous parvenions à venir à bout de cette crise sécuritaire qui, depuis 2015 déjà, a fait des milliers de victimes humaines, entraînant le déplacement de populations autochtones de ma communauté, de leur terre d'origine, de leur terre qu'ils ont héritée de leurs ancêtres, vers des zones dites plus stables, laissant derrière eux biens et bétail. Je voudrais, dans quelques années, que nous parvenions à créer un système éducatif qui permette à chaque personne de sortir avec des compétences qui lui permettent d'affronter la vie pratique. Parce que s'il est vrai qu'il y a des enfants qui vont à l'école, notez que la majorité n'y va pas, il n'est pas moins vrai que la plupart qui vont à l'école sortent et se retrouvent avec des diplômes et sans travail, ce qui n'est pas intéressant. J'imagine que dans un futur proche, les communautés autochtones que nous sommes serions parvenues à reprendre le dessus sur notre économie parce que ce n'est pas un mythe. Notre région est dominée économiquement par des peuples étrangers qui sont venus. Et il n'y a pas à dire Un peuple qui n'a pas le dessus sur son économie est un peuple qui est sujet à l'aliénation, est un peuple qui restera malheureux. Je voudrais que dans un futur proche, mes parents, nos parents prennent conscience que les mariages forcés et les mariages précoces, loin d'être une avancée pour la communauté, sont un pas en arrière. Nous détruisons des vies. Et je voudrais qu'on ouvre les yeux sur cela. Je voudrais que nous ouvrions les yeux également sur ce qui se passe autour de nous. Il n'y a plus d'arbres, il n'y a plus d'environnement. Malheureusement, on détruit et on ne plante pas. Dans un futur proche, j'espère que les populations auront planté dans cette merveilleuse région du Burkina Faso 1 million d'arbres pour les générations à venir. Enfin, j'espère de tout cœur que les fils de ma communauté vont prendre conscience que le changement, quel qu'il soit, ne peut venir de l'extérieur. C'est ensemble, main dans la main, avec détermination, que nous pouvons relever tous les défis un à un. Je voudrais que nous nous engagions pour notre communauté. Voilà comment je vois le futur en tant que jeune fille autochtone.
Assalamu alaikum Assalamu alaikum Mihimmi undadain addain inda Mariatunana Ibrahim Jigalei Cameroon. Greetings once more. I wish to share my expectation in this ongoing conference. As an indigenous girl, I hope to hear support for girls' education and ending of violence against girls, like early marriages. Thanks. Respeta mi cuerpo.
Mayor protección integral para los niños, niñas y adolescentes en Panamá.
No a los delitos sexuales en las redes sociales contra menores de edad.
Exigimos una nueva legislación a favor de niños, niñas y adolescentes en Panamá, con pertinencia cultural.
Protegerme de la sabiduría que no llora, de la filosofía que no ríe y de la grandeza que no se inclina ante los niños.
Siembra a los niños ideas buenas aunque no las conozcan. 2 años se encargarán de descifrarlas a su entendimiento y de hacerlas florecer en su corazón.
No más acuerdos de pena para los delitos sexuales en la legislación panameña.
No a la corrupción de menores, no a la explotación infantil. Somos nosotros, los niños de hoy, que haremos del mundo un futuro mejor y feliz.
Hasta ya, no a la impunidad.
Permítanos vivir nuestra niñez y adolescencia.
Representación visual, gráfica o textual que involucra videojuegos y dibujos animados, que de manera real, explícita o simulada involucra a menores de edad en actividades sexuales. Evitar que los niños sean víctimas de este delito está en nuestras manos. Por eso, habla con ellos sobre esta problemática. Bríndales confianza, conoce qué hacen en internet y quiénes son sus amigos virtuales.
Ya bátele la buto.
Ishoki animak ihu rumah imolong ibi rumahum utileh aslimash.
Hermanas participantes en la segunda Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas, saludamos y valoramos los trabajos que se realizan durante la sesión. Gracias por seguir abriendo caminos.
So wonderful voices, testimonies, and a very good example of that new generation that is striving, learning, getting together from their identity, from their tradition, from their culture, with their own languages. So for ending this intergenerational dialogue, we want to welcome our sister Mai Ting Yung Mong. She is a young Indigenous people rights activist since her bachelor studies and contributing to building the Indigenous Peoples Youth Network in the Asian region. Mai Ting is the director of the Indigenous Peoples Development Program of the Qing Human Rights Organizations, an executive member of the Myanmar Indigenous People Network. So we invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Margarita, for sharing a wonderful intergenerational dialogue, and our panelists, Isabel, Alicia, Bai Woodland, and oh, sorry, over to you, Yumon. Okay. So thank you, Margarita, once again for this one, session. It was very beautiful session. And our panelists, Isabel, Alicia, Vivian, and voices from indigenous girls across the globe for highlighting the importance of this dialogue. Here we have Yumon for her closing remarks for this intergenerational dialogue. Yumon, over to you. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
I can't start my video.
Маленький музыкальный подарок. Вот такой музыкальный инструмент называется шум, такая шумелка. Она дает энергию человека, когда хочется поправить все, чтобы у вас все было замечательно, ничего нигде не болело.
Sorry, there were some technical errors, so we apologize on this technical error. So we invite my team, Yumon, and Indigenous People's Rights activist from Myanmar. She has been working with Indigenous youth and Indigenous women at grassroots level in Myanmar. She is also engaging with different government agencies regarding climate change and making efforts to ensure that the respect and protection of Indigenous people's rights. Currently, she is the youth focal person of the Asia region to the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, and she is the director of Indigenous Peoples Development Program of the Chin Human Rights Organization, CHRO. And she is also an executive member of the Myanmar Indigenous Peoples Network. She is a former representative of Indigenous youth to the Executive Council of Asia Indigenous People Pact, and also the focal person of Network of Indigenous Women in Asia. Yumon, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sushila Dee. Thank you. First of all, let me express my thanks to FIMI for organizing such a great event, the Second World Conference of Indigenous Women, and bringing all of us together from around the world, from different social culture regions together to exchange all our stories, all our movements, all our struggles, and even our aspirations. So also I would like to apologize everyone for not making since the beginning of the event because of the technical complication from my side. However, since the time I joined until the end of the message, the program, it's really inspiring to hear all the different stories, very powerful stories from our elders, from our very young Indigenous young girls. So it really reminds me of the time when I started taking up and immersing myself fully into the Indigenous rights movement. It was without the encouragement from my elders, including my grandma and then my mother, it wouldn't have been possible for me. So I would like to thank all our powerful, strong, and courageous Indigenous grandmothers, mothers, aunts, and sisters around the world for making this space possible for us. So as our elders have shared throughout the program also, we have heard from our elders from Asia, from the Pacific, from Latin America. And what really teach us is that these struggles and the movement of Indigenous women have been really, really strong since a long, long time ago. However, it was not a very easy thing for our grandmothers and mothers to really talk about the rights of Indigenous women like today. So comparing the stories from the time of our grandmothers, from our mothers, now our stories, and then things will even improve better and improve further in the days of our younger generation. And the responsibility falls on our shoulders. So I would really, I'm really touched by the topic of this panel, intergenerational dialogue, where the real strength and the core value of Indigenous communities lie. Our strength is that we always have intergenerational cooperation, a very strong one in our communities. And this not only goes in terms of sharing responsibility, but also in terms of sharing knowledge and then sharing the values that we have. So it includes our culture, it includes our way of livelihoods in terms of our ways of managing our natural resources, our traditional knowledge, and how do we take care of ourselves and also our Mother Earth. And that is also the reason why today that in only 20% of the land of the entire world where Indigenous peoples reside, 80% of the world's ecosystem and biodiversity lies. And even throughout the time that I've been involved for the past about 2 decades, it's been, we have seen a great improvement in terms of acknowledgement, in terms of recognition of the rights of Indigenous peoples, and even not only our rights, but our contribution into the sustainability of this world, this Mother Earth, and the health of this Mother Earth and human beings. So our contribution as Indigenous peoples is now being talked at the global level, and in some advanced countries where governments are more open, we can even see many actions and commitments from member states at the country level, state level. But still, our struggles lie in the very local level. I want us to remind ourselves, I want us to be reminded that our movement, not only as Indigenous peoples, but also as Indigenous women, regarding the rights of Indigenous women and Indigenous young girls, and all the protections that we deserve, and all the social services that we deserve, all the social securities that we deserve, it has been progressing. So things will become better as long as we don't give up, as long as we hold our hands together from one region to another, from one community to another, and then we have the same voice from that comes from that originate from all the struggles, very similar struggles that we have, very similar, very how should I say, very united movements that we have been building. So as long as we don't give up, and as long as we strengthen ourselves, then the goals that we have been envisioning for the past decades, the goals that our grandmothers and our mothers have been envisioning for their Indigenous girls, for their Indigenous women, for so many different decades, we are reaching more closer and closer to these goals, these visions that we have had as collective Indigenous communities. So I would really like to encourage ourselves, and especially the young Indigenous women, young Indigenous girls, that we not only have the struggles and we not only have the burdens, but we also have our Indigenous grandmothers and mothers and our traditional knowledge, who will always, something that will always guide us in our struggle with all these movements. So let us not be discouraged, and let us be proud of what we have as Indigenous communities. Let us be proud of the solutions that we have for this whole world, and let us be proud of the achievements that we have made so far. And of course, we have such a long way still to go, but we have each other, and thus we will surely achieve what we have been envisioning for ourselves and for our future generation as Indigenous women. Here for the past decade, we have seen many great Indigenous women leaders globally who have been serving like all the spaces that Indigenous women have, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. We have seen women leaders on the different arena, including climate change negotiations tables, and all these, including the Beijing platform. And then right now, at this year, we have seen the great leadership of Indigenous women in the food systems transformation, in the Food Systems Summit, and many more to achieve. together. So let us be ready, and especially as young Indigenous women, we have not only the traditional knowledge, but we also have the technology that we need, and we can be the bridge that can connect our traditional knowledge, our Indigenous knowledge, and then the modern society, and then to contribute a better solution, a wider scope of view into the problems that exist in our Mother Earth. So let us not give up, and let's bring our hope as high as we can, and as Indigenous women. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm very much looking forward to all the recommendations that come out of this second Global Indigenous Women Conference. And then this conference will give us the guidelines for, and then the framework for Indigenous women to work together stronger in a deeper sense of oneness, of commonness, and of solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yumon. A beautiful and amazing panel on intergenerational dialogue, exchanging the inspiration and inspiration with lived experience testimony to motivate, guide, and reinvigorate our collective voices and action. Reciprocity, harmony, and interdependency has been has been always a principle and practice of Indigenous people and Indigenous. I don't know, something is not working. Yeah, reciprocity, harmony, and interdependency has been always principle and practice of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous women. This provides a way forward to intergenerational gap, knowledge transfer, and inspiration to all the generation, because together we are stronger and powerful. Now, let me turn toward the Indigenous art. Indigenous art has been always part of our lives and is present in our lives every day, and is also a part of our way of resisting and showing our own way of seeing the life. It needs a special attention for intergenerational transfer. So we present you a short performance by Valentina Sovkina from Sami Women's Forum, who has shared with us a musical instrument of her Sami people's soul. After this performance, we will see a short film from Suvi West, a young Sami filmmaker from Finland, where she tells a story of a mother to her daughter about the importance of caring for all living beings. Please enjoy the Indigenous art.
И маленький музыкальный подарок. Вот такой музыкальный инструмент называется шув, такая шумелка. Она дает энергию человека. Когда хочется поправить все, чтобы у вас все было замечательно, ничего нигде не болело.
Hey yolo, uhtsamanna, jenga alamana, kolejolo lejolo ella, ejala ella.
Namani munnin nocho tuhko ratta jega alte, ko heijalo lelelo, heijalo lelo.
Taninko mun ikte oinen toppe tsähtsä ravka, ko leijolo lejoloa, leijolo leilo.
Maile tsähtsä ravka parka, minko tonta noitnes,
ko leijolo lejoloa, heijolo leilo. Tsähtsä rauka jenga alte, hilpes mänä porai, ko leijolo leijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Ja niin mun kalvotan kohti, vasta tsähtsä ravka,
ko leijolo leijolo ella, heijalo leilo. Ihton tarpas etnimännä, kotti tsähtsä ravka, ko leijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Mutta ääni tsähtsä ravka, lehui vaaraloskalla,
ko leijolo ella, eijalo ella. Talle räven ääle pievän maana jenga ala, ko leijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Ja niin mun kalmanen kotti, ruoista tsähtsä ravka, heijalo lelelo, heijalo lelo.
Muodon aiko rähkis kiivir, kotti tsähtsä ravka, ko leijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Musta pissus saa aksus, olu karra vierjuut, ko heijalo lelelo, heijalo lelo.
Tifta shihtan tsähtsä ravka, orru haippas räfis, ko leijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Maanin pahtuu mielas tsähtsä ravka ilä paha, ko heijalo lelelo, heijalo lelo.
Äikä toolin tsähtsä rauka, uhtsamännän vevai, ko heijolo ella, eijalo ella.
Tussai koota uhtsamanna ja tsähtsä raukan saattai, ko heijalo
leijoloa, heijalo leilo. Nuuda saattai tsähtsä rauka ja ustipin min vailla, ko heijolo leijoloa, heijalo leilo. Ko heijolo leijoloa, heijalo leilo. Maaret! Maaret! Maaret!
What a beautiful art performance. I hope you all enjoyed as much as I enjoyed. With this, now it's time for a short break. Please go for water, tea, coffee, and stretch your bodies. But those who wish to continue with us, you can enjoy the art of Yolanda Martis Gracia, a Nutha poet from Mexico who has sent us a special message to the school, to the Second World Conference of Indigenous Women. A special thanks to Wapi Koni for the short film they shared with us, and to our IO sisters who have dedicated themselves to produce audiovisual materials to showcase the strength and diversity of Indigenous women from Africa. Finally, we remind you after this break, the working group session will start at 11 paper time, which will start almost after 20 minutes from now. In this chat, we will leave the link to each topic, and I request you to join in the session you are interested in. But also not to forget all the issues of our issues here are of our relevance and recommendations will strengthen our global declaration and agenda. Thank you and see you all in the working group session. Enjoy the break.
Excelente y maravilloso día. Soy Yolanda Matías García y mando un saludo a la segunda conferencia mundial de mujeres indígenas desde Guerrero, México.
Ixpatlani siwat ixpatlani ilhuicat nixchixtica ixtlehco ixtoyahuan nochi bopaquilis ixpatlani ixmotlaquenti icamoxtin ixtlacuica iguan totome ixtemiltimoyelpan icachimalxochime ixmotlaquenti icaitlahuitl itlalime iguan ixpatlani 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 ixmotlali tlajcometztli ixquitlahtlahtouilis itlalime ocau cualtetzitzimeh totemiquilis ixquitlahtlanili icamacasa oniatlaueli ixtehtemotlauelajacatl icamacasa quintzayana xochime tehua ixtlacuica iguan totome iguan ocsehpa ixpatlani iguan papalome iguan ixuahla ocsehpa ixtocaqui temictic iguan xochime ipan tlaltipactli. Vuela, mujer, vuela, el cielo te está esperando. Sube y derrama toda tu alegría. Vuela y vístete de nubes. Canta con los pájaros. Llena tu pecho de girasoles. Cúbrete con la luz de las estrellas. Y vuela, vuela, vuela. Siéntate en medio de la luna, platícales a las estrellas de nuestros hermosos sueños. Pídeles que no haya guerras. Busca ese feroz viento para que ya no rompa las flores. Tú canta con los pájaros y de nuevo vuela con las mariposas y vuelve otra vez y siembra flores y sueños en la tierra.
Kwe, My name is Marianne Janta, and I'm from Eskasoni's First Nations. Today, I want to talk to you about a topic that endlessly needs to be addressed to our women, men, Ulnu, and our country. A topic that has hit many homes, including mine. The missing and murdered Indigenous women. I am the namesake of a missing and murdered Indigenous woman. The late Marianne Janta of Boston, Mass. She went missing in the summer of 1982. My family learned that her body was discovered behind a storage facility in Denver, Colorado, April of 1983. Police claimed there were no clues they can obtain. Months later, a man confessed. All this time had passed. My personal intake is that my family did not get the justice they deserve. Murder of a 14-year-old child, there is no justice at all. But if anything my family got was the long-awaited news of peace, although tragic. It was the not knowing that was consuming. Over the past 30 years, it was first reported that 1,181 Indigenous women went missing and murdered in Canada and the United States. To give you an update, the numbers are alarmingly greater. Activists have collected at least 4,232 names in Canada alone. Disappeared without a trace were mothers, daughters, wives, sisters, aunts, nieces, friends, and partners. For years, the Canadian and American government have done very little to escalate and prosecute these cases. For more than 5 years, activists, leaders, and families have been calling for a national inquiry, to which was denied by Stephen Harper. Due to federal inactivity, Ulnu groups all across the continent have begun self-led coalitions to raise awareness. Through art projects and installations, women are being remembered and avenged. I'm showing you today one set example called the Red Dress Project. The Red Dress Project was created by a visual artist, Jamie Black, describing it as an aesthetic response to the issue. By placing over 130 dresses across a college campus, she hoped to raise awareness for then 1,181 unsolved cases. Black was in hopes to draw more attention by inviting Canadians to display their own red dresses. Needless to say that she got my attention and took her up on that offer. Just to fill you in on why Black chose red. Red is a sacred color. Red is the color the spirits can see. Red is the calling back of the spirits of these women, allowing them the chance to be among us, to have their voices heard. This has become the very reason why I choose to have volunteers to hold a red dress, to feel our missing and murdered women and girls to come alive and speak through them. Normally, Indigenous women, and especially those who have gone missing, that they don't take up space anymore. So the whole point of the exhibition is to physically allow these dresses to take up space, so the people are able to see their absence and being marked. The empty red dresses represent our missing and murdered Indigenous women. I represent awareness for our children before us, to keep our dresses filled, for our future generations, to protect our future daughters. On December of 2015, Justin Trudeau announced the long-awaited inquiry promising a total renewal of Canada's relationship with the First Nations. He lied. I am here to remind the newly elected Prime Minister that Ulnu are very mindful people, and we long waited for the justice of not just our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, but also for our missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys. This may not heal our hearts, but at least peace will be in them.
¿Por qué es importante la Segunda Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas? Este es un espacio de encuentros y reencuentros, de conectarnos y compartir propuestas, sueños colectivos y retos que enfrentamos. En este espacio intercambiaremos ideas para aportar soluciones en un contexto global crítico, donde se están incrementando las desigualdades, acentuando las brechas para las mujeres indígenas. Construyamos un mundo más justo entre todos y todas. Why is the second Global Conference of Indigenous Women important? It is a space for encounters and reunions that we will use to connect with one another and share proposals, collective dreams, and common challenges. We will exchange ideas to find solutions in a critical global context where inequalities are on the rise, further widening the gap for Indigenous women. Let's build together a more just world for everyone. ¿Por qué es importante la Segunda Conferencia Global de Mujeres Indígenas? Este es un espacio de encuentros y reencuentros, de conectarnos y compartir propuestas, sueños colectivos y retos que enfrentamos. En este espacio intercambiaremos ideas para aportar soluciones en un contexto global crítico, donde se están incrementando las desigualdades, acentuando las brechas para las mujeres indígenas. Construyamos un mundo más justo entre todos y todas. Why is the second Global Conference of Indigenous Women important? It is a space for encounters and reunions that we will use to connect with one another and share proposals, collective dreams, and common challenges. We will exchange ideas to find solutions in a critical global context where inequality